Hey, 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 this is Jennifer Allwood, and this is the Jennifer Allwood Show, where we talk about creating a beautiful home and building a creative business.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad to be with you again here today and be able to chat just a little bit about kind of this isn't what you hear most of the time after you start the new year. This isn't what most people are podcasting about in January or blogging about in January or talking about in January. But I want to talk today about not setting any goals for the year, about the art of anti-goal setting, actually, and how some years I think that we're called to just be more gentle with ourselves and less pushing. And so that's what I want to chat with you about today. I know that when I did a Facebook Live on this topic a few weeks ago, I was shocked at the response that I got from people who are just so tired of seeing all the setting your goal posts for January and pushing posts in January, and the posts that kind of make them feel lesser than because they know they probably should be setting goals and yet they just can't. And that's actually exactly how I feel this year. I'm going into 2018 way different from any other year. And most of the time, I am just such a goal setter, and I love having big goals, and I love pushing myself. I mean, this is the girl who bought her first home at 21. You don't do that unless you're someone who pushes herself, you know. This is the girl who did 10 triathlons in 5 years, and will be doing another one again this year, and didn't swim. So I love a good goal, you guys. I'm here to tell you, I love not only setting goals, but the real high, the real sexy part for me comes in the attainment of the goals. And so, love goals. But we rolled around, this year to the end of 2017, and it was just a rough season for my husband and I in terms of our home is up for sale. Some health challenges, nothing big, but let's be honest here, women, menopause, crazy things like that just have made me not feel like myself. House shopping, packing, we've had a death in the family. It just kind of seemed like there has been a lot. And sometimes I think we just go through seasons where there's a lot. And I'm guessing a lot of you can relate to this. And maybe you're not in a season of a lot right now, but usually the way the world works is if you're not in a season of a lot, you either will be shortly or you just came out of one. And so this year, the end of 2017 for us was just a lot. Thankfully, I was able to really take off most of the month of December. I'd come off of a lot of business travel in November. I had been to Christy Wright's Business Boutique. I had been to an event with James Wedmore out in California. I spoke at an event in Huntsville, Alabama. And so I had traveled a bunch. My body was tired, mentally just exhausted from a lot of the big things going on in our life. And before I know it, I wake up and it's January 1st. And literally, my friends, I was looking at all the posts on social media and I was thinking, every other year I have posted those exact things. What are your goals? What are you going to do? Push yourself. Brand new year, brand new book. Write your own chapter. You guys know. You know all of the things, right? And instead, this year, I was like, meh. Let me say that again. This year, I was like, meh. And I just don't feel like it. And the more I talked to other people, the more I realized, wow, there are a whole gang of people who are just in a season of a lot, and it's been really difficult for them to set goals this year too. And so this year, what I'm focusing on in 2018 is being, at least starting out the year with being much more gentle with myself. I pushed so hard in 2017, blew almost every goal for my business, clear out of the water, made amazing connections, made an incredible income. It was all fantastic. But I'm rolling up into 18 feeling like I need gentleness. I need to take more time for myself, and I need to just have some time to kind of marinate in exactly what I want to do next. And I'm guessing that there's many of you who are in exactly the same position. And so for those of you listening to my podcast today and you're like, dang, Jennifer, thank you for this, because I literally just have not been able to bring myself to set any goals this year either. I just want to give you permission um, to just be okay with that for a while and to take the pressure off of yourself. And I'll tell you personally what I'm doing this year. Instead of setting a ton of goals, this is what I have told the Lord. I have just literally prayed the prayer of Jabez, and just said, Lord, whatever you want to do with my year. Because here's one of the things that I think happens. Sometimes I think our goals are out of whack, or they don't feel quite right, or they're really misaligned, or they feel too big, or they feel too small, or whatever. I think the part of the problem is, until we catch a vision of what God sees for your future and what God's wanting for your future, that the goals just don't quite fit. Does that make sense? And so instead of trying to like push my own, list of things that I want to do off on the Lord this year, instead I'm just saying, here I am, Lord, use me. And here's the prayer of Jabez for those of you who want to just grab a quick pen and paper. You can write it down. I have this on a bracelet. This is a prayer that I taught my kids when they were little. As soon as we get off this podcast, I'm going to go back and make sure each of them still recall. But here is the prayer of Jabez, okay? It says, "Oh Lord, that you would bless me indeed, that you would enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, and I would not cause pain." Okay, so the enlarge my territory for me is the big piece. Enlarging my territory means enlarging my life or changing my life, Lord, in a way that I have greater impact. And, so many times I think when we set goals, for the new year, especially if we're entrepreneurs, our goals are often very monetary, right? And so I can tell you this, that I know that if you get into alignment with what God is wanting you to do in your business and your life, and you ask Him to enlarge your territory, that your impact will be greater. And when your impact is greater, the income will absolutely follow that. And so, most goals I think fail often because we're aiming at what we want and not what God's wanting for us. So this year I'm just saying, here I am, Lord, use me. I have a monetary goal for my business. I have some things in mind that of course I would like to do. I know we just hired me a personal trainer. We've also hired someone to help our family with meal prep because we have been failing miserably in those two areas. In the last year. And so those things we're going to be doing. But otherwise, I'm not setting any big goals. And so if that's you, I just want you to feel really okay with that as well. I found that there's some issues that a lot of people have with goals that I thought I could talk about to you today. And just to further kind of give you permission to be gentle with yourself in 2018. But here's the problem that a lot of people have with goals and the word goals and with setting goals. Okay, so the word goals just in and of itself often will freak people out. It overwhelms them. They freeze. They hear the word goals. They run in the other direction. They see it on a Facebook post. They're like gagging. Okay, so here's what I've been calling it in my inner circle coaching group instead. I've been calling it lifestyle ambitions. Lifestyle ambitions. And the reason that I've called it that is because I've told the women that I'm coaching in my group, instead of us setting like huge goals this year for some people who are just not feeling it, instead I want you to visualize the last day of 2018. I want you to visualize December 31st. And I want you to see how you feel. And I want you to picture where you're at. And I want you to kind of think about how you'll be able to kind of look back on 2018 and what were the things that you did or the decisions that you made or the things that you put into place that really make you in the year being so super proud of what you did. And they don't all have to revolve around business. In fact, the majority of them probably shouldn't. And so we're talking a lot about lifestyle ambitions instead of goals because often I just think the word goals just absolutely freaks people out. Another issue I think a lot of people have with goals is that often the goals that they want to set are really things that honestly don't matter. Let me give you a good example, okay? I'll get people that come into my coaching group and they'll be like, Jennifer, I want to get 100,000 followers on my Facebook page this year. And instinctively, I say to them, why? Why do you want 100,000? Like, tell me, what do you think magical is going to happen at 100,000? Because I can tell you absolutely what happens at 100,000. You hit 100,000, you go, okay, well, that's great, fine and dandy. I'm proud of that, but I feel no different, and nothing's changed. And 100,000 doesn't feel any different than 90,000 did. And does that make sense? And this is coming from the girl who's got 300,000 Facebook followers, by the way. But literally, so often those numbers are just a vanity matrix. And by vanity matrix, I mean it just makes you feel good about yourself. It makes you feel accomplished. But listen, you guys, numbers are no indication of impact. Okay, let me say that again. Numbers, the number of followers you have, the size of your business page, none of that is an indication of the size of your impact. I would rather you had 10,000 Facebook followers who just love and adore you and can't wait for your next post and are your biggest fans than 100,000 followers who make you feel good, but you've got zero engagement on your page. And so I think that we have to really walk that fine line of making sure the goals we're setting actually matter. Number 3, I think often our goals are too big and we quit midstream because they're not even attainable. They're goals that are so big that they should have been chunked out into, 3 little mini goals leading up to the big one, or 5 little mini goals leading up to the big one. But often our goals are just honestly too big. Now, the reverse side of that is often our goals are too small, and we're playing too small because God's plans are actually so much bigger for our life. But here's where we go back to, until you catch a glimpse of God's vision for your life, your goals will always be way too small. And point number 5, I think creatives just have the hardest time with goals. One of the reasons I think creatives have a hard time with goals, if you're a creative, I think you might be able to relate to this, is because we tend to be just a little bit flighty. We tend to be very, very passionate. Okay, so when we're in, baby, we are all in, but we're also mind changers. This is why we get halfway through painting a piece of furniture and we decide to scrap it and start over and go in a completely different direction. Okay, creative people like a lot of options. They also, most of the time, like for what they're doing to be fun. And often creative people are feelers, which means they'll kind of start going in one direction, and when they get to a point where it doesn't feel right to them anymore, they want the ability to shift. Now, this is a God-given blessing, you guys. This is not you being a creative person who's flaky. It's not you being a creative person who, it can't finish something. This is not you being a creative person who, is unreliable, changes her mind too much, whatever. It's none of that. It's none of that. God actually wired you to be kind of all in whatever direction you're going, to be really multi-passionate, to always kind of, often kind of jump from one thing to another, both mentally and emotionally. So for a creative person to sit down and look most of the time at a long list of goals, often it just doesn't feel right. And it doesn't feel right because sometimes creative people don't like looking all the way down a year in advance or 5 years in advance or a decade in advance. Does that make sense? Because we're feelers and we tend to want to just kind of head in a direction, and then often it won't feel right and we'll want to shift. Okay, so this is one of the reasons creatives struggle with goal setting. They want wiggle room. They want to be able to just do a mid-year switcheroo if they feel like it when we're 6 months in. And so to my creative friends, this is what I tell them. Don't set things too far in advance. You don't have to, because it will lessen the anxiety for a lot of you. If instead of looking all the way at your calendar through 2018, just kind of looking at the first couple months. And I think that will help some of you so much. Now, why do we often set goals that are way too small for ourselves? Okay, let's talk about that. There's several reasons that people often set goals way too small. The first one I want to talk about is that many people are honestly terrified of success. Okay, and when I say terrified of success, I literally just mean that you'll reach your goal, but you're terrified that you're going to suffer disaster as a result of the goal. Okay, so that you're going to make all this money, but you're going to be a knucklehead and spend it all. Or that you're going to be super successful in your business, but you're going to lose your family in your process. Or you're going to hit all these big, huge goals and your family's not going to look at you the same and people are going to judge you. So this is what it looks like to be terrified of success. And shockingly enough, there's, yes, a whole group of people who are terrified of failure, but I would go as far as to say there is an equal amount of people who are terrified of success. And so that's one of the reasons we set goals too small, because we're terrified of actually attaining them. Another reason we set goals too small is that we think to ourselves, what if I get there? I do the thing, right? I make the goal, I accomplish it, but I can't sustain it. And here's what I would say to that. Whatever God is calling you to do, I know that He will also equip you to do. He's not going to have a call on your life that you cannot sustain, that you don't have any natural ability to do without striving. I know that for sure. And so if you're afraid that if you attain your goal that you won't be able to sustain it, that is a really me-focused type of thinking. And instead, I want you to take your focus off of yourself and take the focus, put it back on the Lord, and put it back on serving your community. That will take all the pressure off of you. Reason number 3 that people often set super small goals is because sometimes, especially if you're a good church girl, you feel guilty about wanting success. And I can remember this for me at a point in my life a good decade ago. Jason and I had 2 little boys a decade ago. Ava was not born yet, but my husband had decided to go into real estate for a short time. This was right when the real estate market was just taking an absolute nosedive. So it was a really hard time for us. We were living on credit cards for a year, you guys. While I was in my painting business paid all the bills, and my painting business, paid the women that were working for me and allowed me to keep staying home with my kids. But we were living on credit cards when we were out getting groceries, and there wasn't a whole lot for extra, and it was a tight time for us, a tight time. So Mama was not able to be decorating the house. I was not able to be out buying new curtains and new sofas and, doing things for the home. And I can remember literally telling the Lord one time, and I don't think He was offended by this statement, but I literally told the Lord, either you're going to need to take this desire for nice things away from me, or please give me the income to be able to decorate and buy what I want to for our home. I literally said that. And without 1 ounce of feeling guilty about it either. And you know what? I know that the Lord was not offended, and He has been He's been so faithful. And now we're in a position where, of course, that's not, an issue anymore. But I can remember a time when I felt guilty about wanting nice things. I felt guilty about wanting to be successful so I could buy nice things. And so I think often we feel like we shouldn't want success. And I think that that's a lie from the pit of hell. And so that's something we each need to work our own way through to get over. But I do think that it's okay to want nice things and to also be surrounded by nice things, all right? Our goals are not necessarily worldly. And I think we need to quit feeling guilty about those things. I can remember too a time, it was about 8 years ago, when I took the women that were working for me and we did a painting job at a lake community. And the client who had the lake home we were painting in, she offered to allow us to stay in the home while we were there painting her cabinets. And we were like, heck yeah, we're going to paint, in the morning, and we're going to swim off the dock every afternoon. And me, being the nerd that I am, took a journal with me because, I am a thinker. I like to really kind of get deep and be very reflective. And so all the other girls, are jumping into the lake, and I'm sitting there with my journal and just talking to God about some things I wanted for my life. And I literally put in my journal, and I'm going to be putting this on my Facebook page, that I wanted to travel every quarter. And I know that probably sounds crazy to some of you, but I love traveling. I love going places. For me, it doesn't even have to necessarily be hop on a plane and, heading to the Cayman Islands like we did this fall. It doesn't have to be that. It can be hopping in our car, packing a weekend bag, and going 3 hours up the road to Des Moines. Okay? I just like to see new things. As a creative person, I actually have an entire blog post on this. I'll put it in the show notes. But I think there are a lot of creative people that really have a deep need to travel. And part of that is just that traveling inspires you to think differently, to create differently. It inspires you to, I think, often go deeper in your craft. I think that we underestimate the power of being surrounded by beautiful things when we're creatives, okay? And so if I can put myself in a position where I'm in a beautiful area, walking on, the beaches in Cancun like we were this summer, it's so inspiring to me. And then when I get home from that, I cannot wait to create. I can't wait to do more things in my business and to just go deeper and harder. Like, it just literally lights me on fire on the inside. So I put in my journal, Lord, I'd love to be able to travel once a quarter. And I felt a tiny bit greedy for that, you guys. I honestly did. And yet thought, you know what? The Lord's not surprised. He put that in me. And so 8 years ago, I put that in the journal. And I am happy to tell you guys that for the last 3 years, I have literally traveled once a quarter. And what a difference that has made in my business. And so when you're thinking about your goals, I think often we make our goals too small because we're afraid that our goals are going to look and feel really worldly, and we feel really bad about it. So reason number 5, people often make goals that are too small, is they're terrified of making money and they're terrified of keeping money. Listen, we really have to get over this issue. And I'm talking to you, ladies. We have to get over the issue of feeling bad about making and keeping money. When you make more money, you can give more money. When you make more money, you can hire more people. When you make more money, you can take the pressure off of your husband. Or if you're a single mom, you can take the pressure off of yourself. And so there has to be a point where we quit feeling bad about making money, and we remember that the Bible says that God gives us wisdom to gain wealth. Not wealth so we can buy, more crazy things, but there's a lot of reasons and a lot of good things that we can do with that wealth. And the last reason that people often make their goals, I think, way too small is because they feel really guilty about success or succeeding, especially if they're surrounded by people who are stuck. I think often there's this fear that, will we lose the people we're closest to if we become successful? Will we have to quit hanging out with certain people? Will our mother-in-law judge us? Will our sister not look at us the same? And most of the time, those are all just crazy scenarios, you guys, that we've put in our head that literally are not going to come to fruition. But we can talk ourselves out of about anything. Honestly, we can. And so I think we have to be really careful when we are goal setting to make sure that we're not setting them too small. And so as you go into 2018 here, and I know that we're almost a month in right now, but I also know, for talking to the thousands of women that I get to coach every month, I also know that there's a lot of people who just wonder, where the heck did 2017 just go, number one? Number 2, I haven't been able to really set any goals for myself yet in 2018. And I just want to say grace to you. Grace, and more grace to you, that sometimes I think there's seasons where we just need to be gentle with ourselves. And we just need to know that maybe just doing what I did and just giving the Lord the prayer of Jabez and just say, you know what, I don't know this year, Lord, but you know, and that's good enough for me. And if you're in a place where you feel like you're supposed to be setting goals, I just encourage you to make sure that they're not too small, to make sure that they are in alignment with the call of God on your life. And I think that when you can do that, that it absolutely changes everything about how you feel about goal setting. So I hope that was super helpful to you guys. I hope that that just gave you some encouragement for those of you who are feeling like, gosh, I just can't do it this year. And you know what? Grace to you. I do have a free ebook for those of you who could really use some prayers for your book in 2018, who just really feel like a word from the Lord would change a whole lot. You can go to www.jenniferallwood.com/prayer. And you can absolutely get my ebook for creative entrepreneurs, prayers for creative entrepreneurs, there on that link. And I'll put that here in the show notes as well. But I hope that that's a blessing to you. Feel free to share it with other people who you know who could maybe be blessed by it. So thank you guys again for tuning in here this week. If you've enjoyed the podcast, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with a friend or hopping on over to iTunes and just giving us a positive review, those are always so helpful in getting new sponsors sponsors for the podcast and in making sure that we have great ratings. So we appreciate you here at Team Allwood. We are grateful for you. We're anxious to see what 2018 does for all of our businesses. And so until next week, stay creative. We'll talk to you then.